Welcome to Liberty Legion, where sensibility rises above radicalism and liberty stands above all. Join us as we bring common sense back into the conversation for freedom and for the future. Now here's your host, Aaron.
Welcome back to another episode of Liberty Legion. I'm your host, Erin Brantley. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, like, and review the podcast. It helps me out immensely, and I greatly appreciate you being here. Without further ado, let's dive into it. So what if I told you that your local school board can make decisions about your child's identity, health, or classroom experience without ever telling you? And I believe the Constitution actually gives us the power to put a stop to this. By the end of this episode, my goal is for you to understand where parental rights come from, how schools are testing them, and what parents can do locally. First things first, let's lay the foundation. Parental rights aren't just moral, they're constitutional. Under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, courts have long recognized the fundamental right of parents to direct the upbringing, education, and care of their children. The most prominent case that you're going to come across when you start to dive into parental rights is Troxel v. Granville. Now, this was a 2000 Supreme Court decision, and it's a cornerstone for parental rights arguments in education and policy debates across the country. It states that, among many things, but first of all, fit parents are presumed to act in their child's best interest, meaning the government, agencies, school districts cannot implement policies with the assumption that you are not looking out for the best interest of your child. If they don't have material evidence of abuse, of neglect, anything that needs to be obviously reported, and they are mandated reporters in our school system, they have to assume that you're going to act in the best care of your child. And schools cannot base decisions and policies off the assumption that you are bad as a parent, to all my parents out there. The state also can't override that without compelling reason. Again, they have to have material evidence that there's neglect or abuse involved. And in plain English, the Troxel v. Granville said, the government doesn't raise your kids, you do. Now, what happens when local schools start interpreting that right differently? What if they start to implement policies where if a student shows up and asks to go by a different gender identity, their pronouns, or a different name, the schools are prohibiting staff from informing parents? Now, the argument I hear on this is, well, maybe they're afraid to tell their parents because they might get abused at home. But the law clearly states that that can't be the reason behind a policy. You cannot assume that the parent will act in any way but the child's best interest. And once again, per Troxel v. Granville, 2000 Supreme Court case, and I recommend every parent just take some time to go read this case. It had to do with grandparents requesting visitation with a mom who, their son was the father of the two or three children, and he had committed suicide. And so they were seeking mandatory visitation with their grandkids. And Washington had a law in place where anyone, for any reason, could petition the courts for visitation with kids. So now let's go into the modern conflict and how this applies to modern day policies and what we're seeing in our school systems nationwide. The debate isn't about tolerance, it's about transparency. And a lot of parents' rights groups are fed up with the school's consistent effort, or what feels like a consistent effort, to cut parents out of the conversation, to withhold information, to encourage their kids to withhold information from them. Now, of course, this is primarily focused on right now gender identity or privacy policies. That's what the school's using to implement these policies that ultimately withhold information from the parents. They instruct staff not to tell parents, like I mentioned earlier, if a child changes names, pronouns, or gender identity at school. I read in a current case filing at the Supreme Court that there are approximately at least 6,000 of these policies nationwide in our school systems. 6,000. This is not a minor issue right now. This is a very common issue. And I almost guarantee you, if you looked at the school districts in your state, you have a school district that has this policy currently in place. Now, the advocates for this are calling it a protection for vulnerable students, and critics call it a breach of parental trust. I would argue an argument can also be made it's interfering with the ability of a parent to care for their child. If you are withholding that a child is maybe having confusion or a mental health crisis around a gender identity, and you're not informing the parent, or you have a school policy in place that forbids you from informing the parent, that to me is withholding pertinent information that impacts the care of the child, because it should be up to the parent what the next steps will be. Having a conversation with their child, seeking mental health care, coming up with a care plan, whatever it may be, but you are completely and utterly denying the parent the opportunity to care for their child properly by not letting them know what's going on. And sure, it could be some like social contagion, it's a fad at school, whatever, but what if it's not? And then what if it leads to other dangerous mental health issues and it was completely neglected to be brought up to the parents? Parents have a right to know. And I think we're going to see this come up in the courts quite a bit more in the coming years. So let's talk about a few of these cases that have already gone through the courts. There's Wisconsin v. Kettle Moraine. Now, the court said schools can't change a child's identity without parental consent. So this obviously was a pro-parent precedent. The school district was helping this child transition without any of the parents' knowledge. So the court said, sorry, you can't do that. You cannot do that without the parents' consent. Now you have, on the other side, a more pro-school decision. This was Massachusetts, and it was Foote v. Ludlow. And the court sided with the district, saying non-disclosure didn't violate parental rights. They claimed parents could not impact or affect a policy set by the school. Now, again, I disagree with this decision. The parents challenged a non-disclosure policy. The First Circuit upheld the school's policy, ruling that it did not violate parental due process rights. So again, they said that the privacy policy can stand, that they are respecting the student's privacy, and the school has no obligation to inform the parents anything about the student and gender identity, or whether they're expressing conflict or concern around their gender identity, or maybe even mental health issues related to their gender identity. Now, one case that I was really hoping the Supreme Court would take, because there's multiple behind this case pending for the Supreme Court to review, to accept, was the Lee versus the Poudre School District. Now, this is in Colorado, and parents were challenging a secrecy policy. What happened is there was a after-school club, I think it was Gender and Sexuality Club. An art teacher invited two young girls, and these are like 12-year-olds we're talking about, very young kids, to an after-school program. Didn't disclose what this club was about or anything. They get there, and they're discussing gender and sexuality. Now, the teacher hosting the club goes on to talk about how if you have feelings of discomfort in your body, you could be trans. And I'm sorry, but like, what kid going through puberty doesn't feel like, who feels super comfortable in their body through puberty? I don't think there's many. So to me, that's a dangerous thing to plant into a young kid's head, right? And then they also said, oh, if you are trans, you have a higher tendency towards suicidal ideations. As a parent, having a school staff member that I don't even know broach these subjects with my 12-year-old would have me livid. Not to mention, I didn't even know what this club was or what it could entail. They didn't even tell the students this before they attended this club. It gets worse. So the teacher leading this club then went on to ask who was trans or who identified as trans in the classroom, and gave out prizes to those students who identified as trans. So you're now incentivizing kids, 12-year-olds, you're incentivizing 12-year-olds to identify as trans. And it goes a step further. She also went on to say, like, oh, it's okay to not tell your parents. Like, you probably shouldn't tell your parents because, they may have whatever. They basically encourage not disclosing any of what happened with that in that club or what that club is about to their parents. Luckily, these two girls did. The parents got these girls, mental health care, and then they sued the school district. The Supreme Court did not take the case. And I'll read a little bit about what Justice Alito said. The troubling and tragic allegations in this case underscore the great and growing national importance of the question that these parent petitioners present. And it is growing. Like I mentioned, 6,000 plus policies nationwide around this specific topic. That's an epidemic, in my opinion. It's everywhere in our school districts. We'll see if any of the other cases behind Lee versus Poudre get accepted by the Supreme Court. I truly think this is an issue that needs to be litigated all the way through and reviewed by the Supreme Court, because we're just going to see more of it. It also, why are the schools so hell-bent on keeping information from parents? It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of effort to build collaborative relationships with parents in most of these school districts, okay? And we know that schools can be a dangerous place for our kids. And that can be from even teachers. There's other instances in Colorado that I can get into, and I will maybe in later episodes. We should have a collaborative relationship with our kids' teachers and the school staff. We should feel like the school board is there to ensure our kids are getting the best education as possible, not broaching or like being hyperactive and pursuing these gender identity conversations and wanting to continuously bring these conversations up. And not only that, but encourage secrecy for these kids to keep this from their parents. So why does this matter locally? It's because local school boards, not Washington, control these policies. These are our kids we're talking about. And it is incumbent upon not only the parents, but the community to protect our kids and ensure we don't have insane radicals in positions of power in our schools directly impacting our kids and potentially doing them harm. That's on us as a community and parents to be the watchdogs of this. We have seen, like I said, a massive increase in these policies. We've seen a rise of trans identity in our youth. I think an argument can be made that it's absolutely a social contagion that's being harnessed and even fed by the culture in so many of our schools. The other issue we have, many parents and many people in the community don't vote in school board elections. There's often less than a 15% turnout. People, that is abhorrent when we are talking about our kids, the most vulnerable in our community, and we can't bother to do a little bit of research, figure out what school board candidates we want. This is why the radical Democrats have been able to infest our education institutions across the country, because the apathy and the lack of engagement, 15% turnout is driving me mad. And we cannot be surprised that we have 6,000 policies now across the country that we're going to have to fight back. It would have been much easier to get better voter turnout, better engagement, more participation in school board meetings to ensure that these crazy people don't get into these positions and pass their radical agenda. It's how a small group of activists can steer policies that are going to affect every family in that community. And we've handed over the wheel. It's time to take it back. And very likely, you have school board elections in just a few weeks. I would love in some areas to see you guys at 20%. And please do email me, Erin@thelibertylegion.com, when you get that 20% turnout rate. Go knock doors. Go talk to all your friends and family. Go get active in your community and talk about how you need to vote in these school board races. It's time we take the power back. And here's another statistic. In 2023, which this is after COVID, people. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to harp on you guys. I'm not trying to be too harsh, but this is after COVID. In 2023, fewer than 1 in 6 parents voted in their district elections. It is unacceptable. Unacceptable, because I guarantee you these parents who have had to file these lawsuits and feel their children have been harmed really wish that they had more parents tuned in and knew what was going on and then also stepping up to vote. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox on that. I don't want you guys to feel like I'm scolding you too much, but still, get out and vote in those local elections. Please, school board elections matter. Let's get to a little bit more of a positive place. How can we solve this? Attend your school board meetings. Okay, so outside of just voting, attend your school board meetings. Have your voice heard. I know we had great attendance in the COVID era. Thank goodness. We need that energy back because we have 6,000 policies to now try to fight and undo and push back against in our school districts. And there's even crazier stuff happening than these policies where they prohibit staff from informing you certain things about your child. There's even crazier things. Maybe I'll do a whole nother episode, just like a radical left expose on all the craziest policies I can find. If you think you'd like that, let me know in the comments. You can also request records under open records laws if you have certain questions, if there's things that you're suspicious about. We have open records laws, utilize them. It's also important to know your rights. So that's why I said I would go read Troxel v. Granville. You can just put it into Google, read that decision and understand wholly what that's saying about your constitutional rights as a parent under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, and then use that knowledge to push back against these extreme policies. Also support parental bills of rights initiatives, and these are happening in states across the country. These will be on your ballots. Get informed, volunteer to go get signatures to get these measures on the ballot. Get plugged into parental advocacy groups in your area. I guarantee you have one in your state. Go look them up, support them. Get your friends to support them, whether it's donating, whether it's volunteering, any of it, spreading the word about them. And I want to say this again, there are some very good teachers out there. And I know there are school administrators who want to do good and who think this insanity is absolutely unacceptable. To them, I want to say thank you. And please continue to stay in this fight with us, because Parents and teachers shouldn't be enemies. That only is to the detriment of the child. We should both want the kids to thrive. And in order to do that, we have to have an open and solid line of communication. And so I really, really have a hard time understanding why school districts are trying to build a wall between the parent and the school. It's not good. It's not for the betterment of the child. I guarantee you that. Now, freedom starts at home and accountability starts with showing up. The reason that we got here is because we were not showing up. It's time to change that. So once again, to recap, parental rights, you have a right to oversee and be in control of the upbringing and care of your child per the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise, okay? Continue to monitor the cases that are coming through the Supreme Court, and I hope we get more, which I think we will because it's a very hot topic right now. We have the court battles that we've seen. It's going to continue. So we'll see, how these cases play out. And get involved locally. You've got school board elections coming up. I want you all to please take the time to research your school board candidates. You can probably find them online. I'm sure there are, again, parental advocacy groups who can tell you who's good, who's bad. Show up, vote. Go to your school board meetings. So I'll close out with this. The Supreme Court recognized parental rights 25 years ago, but today, local policies are quietly erasing them. It's time to take back the conversation school board by school board. And that starts with you. Whether you have kids or not, you 100% should care what's happening with your kids in your community. That's it for today. Thank you again for tuning into this episode of Liberty Legion. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe on all of the platforms. If you could, leave a review and share with a friend. We'll see you next time.